All right, this is Chapter 10, Section 3. We talked about the House. Let's talk about the Senate. All right, the Senate itself has 100 members because there are two per state and there are 50 states. Yes, 50 states. So 100 senators, they call it the most exclusive club in the world because there are just so few members and they're just so powerful. Um, they get into the press a lot more. You know their faces. Uh, they are the ones that run for president, and they try to manipulate both Washington, D.C. and the states to try to get things done. Presently, we actually have about 52 who caucus with the Democrats and about 48 that with the Republicans. All right, but let's talk a little bit more how we get them. All right, so what are the qualifications for these people? All right, you have to be the age of 30 if we sign you in. You have to have been a citizen of the United States for 9 years. And if you compare these to the way the House from the other video, you'll see that these guys are actually it takes more. The threshold is more. The other one was 25. This is 30. The other one was 7 years. This is 9. So whenever you compare these two things, and I will ask you about that, you can always, the Senate is always the harder one. All right, the third of these things is that you have to live in the state that you represent. All right, so Hillary Clinton, who now actually is the Secretary of State, used to be a senator. And when she wanted to run for Senate, she actually did it from New York, but they had a 6-month deadline. 6 months before the election, you had to actually have moved and been a citizen of New York. She did. She actually lives in Armonk, which is actually about 30 or 40 miles away from here. So she actually lives very close to us. And Bill technically lives there too. And so it qualified her, even though she's originally from Illinois, outside of Chicago. All right, so the elections themselves, okay, you get a term which is for 6 years. Basically, it allows for more long-term thinking. And what I mean by this is that these guys are always going for re-election. But in the House, like we previously discussed, you'd actually have someone that every 2 years has to raise $1 million. Yes, senators have to raise more money, but they have a lot of time in those 6 years to make a mistake that House members really can't afford to make a lot of times. So they can actually think more about what's good for the United States of America than what's good just for their state. They'll do both, but they can do it a lot more about worrying about the country than House members. And so there's a lot more, like we said, long-term thinking. This also spawns why some of these guys think actually that they can run for president, because they've been dealing with more issues and in more depth. All right, 2 senators per state we talked about. So how many of them are there? All right. And we answered that question. Elected from the state at large. So does a senator have to come from their district? Well, what is their district? So if you answered yes, you would be correct. The very few people that have been senators actually have been thrown out of the Senate. They have a lot of rules about behavior and stuff like that. But by and large, these guys have served their country, served them well, and for the most part, been pretty good people, pretty good citizens. But that's just a real quick background of senators. Outside of the fact that they tend to be older also, they tend to be more experienced, and they tend to be, many times with experience, they could be former governors, House members, things like that. And they have more stature in the states. They used to be elected just by the state legislatures. The state figured out who these are. Today, we actually elect them. Okay, thank you very much.